What is up, y'all? My name is Brandon. Let's do a Booktube newbie tag. I'm gonna preface this with the fact that this is on my phone, no mic, no extra lights, nothing like that. So please let me know how the audio is, everything. Feedback is highly encouraged, and I appreciate everybody for even clicking on it to begin with. So the first question we got, why did you start this channel? I think the biggest thing is wanting to talk about books, but not having enough people in real life to do that with. I think that's the main reason that anybody makes a channel about a certain hobby in the first place. And so particularly the kind of books that I'm into, which we'll get to later on, not enough people in real life read those books that I'm able to talk about with. So this is the best option. The second thing is reviewing books solely through writing has its downsides just because of things like Instagram character count and the ability to kind of get lost in a stream of consciousness. When you're talking, that expression is a little bit more genuine, I think, than through writing. So I think that this is going to be a good way for me to express myself and convey what I'm trying to convey about a book without it being solely through writing. Second question is, what are some fun and unique things that you can bring to Booktube? I don't know about fun, but I think unique and interesting recommendations are definitely something that I can bring. Some in-depth analysis of books. I have a couple of very in-depth reviews on my Instagram, one of The Tunnel, one of Gravity's Rainbow, that I would love to do a video talking about those. I think that those are both, there's endless discussion that's available for those books. My home-built bookshelves behind me, I can go over, how I organized them, how we built them, things like that. I think those things are really the biggest things that I can bring that are unique, because every person's unique, your mind is unique. So anything that's coming out of that is going to be unique. The third question says, what are you most excited for about this new channel? And to be honest, I'm nervous, yeah. But I'm also very excited because, no matter if 5 people watch it, if 100 people watch it, if 1,000 people watch it, interacting with anybody about books that you love or a topic that you love is something that's exciting no matter who you are. And sharing my thought process, my analysis about a book or about a genre or about a publisher, things like that are all things that I'm excited for. The fourth question says, why do you love reading? And I've got a little bit longer answer to this. So I made a post on Instagram about this a while back, probably April maybe, about things that I love in books. And I had, a stack of my favorite books of all time. And in that post, I talked a lot about, I think the thematic content of a book is much more important than the plot. And I'll say plot is important, but it's not everything. If a book doesn't have a plot, that's fine for me. I don't love a book because of the plot only. I love it for a lot of other reasons. Things like emotional connection, things like the musicality of the language, the poetic nature, the flow of a book, an ending that lends itself to a beginning. I think that's the beauty of reading, is that you can go into something, get to the end of it, then you can go back to the beginning and have an entirely new perspective and a new experience when you reread that book. I love the unknown, the interpretation of a book, how there's not one right answer. There's not one view that unlocks the entirety of the book. There's something for everybody in each book. And books might not be for you, and that's fine. I like that you don't need to read to escape reality. You can read to become something new within its embrace. Become something different than you were before you started that book. think that's beautiful. Love that things are hard to process and get, so to speak, but it opens the gates of the mind and lets you think and interpret and do some kind of work mentally or emotionally. I think those are important things that are not lost on me when it comes to reading. It's not something that you can just fly through and, oh, I read this book, I'm done. Right? It's something that sticks with you, something that you can think about, something that you can read again and get something new out of it. That's what I love about reading. Fifth question says, what book or series got you into reading? I don't read a lot of series now. However, I think the most recent series that really kind of pushed me over the edge into, a voracious reader is the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I think that's probably one of the greatest things I've ever read. Hands down, the universe that he created, the character work that he utilizes in that series, and the emotional connection that you feel to those characters is incredible. Nothing like I've ever read before or since then. And I think that the metafictional aspect of it, once you get farther into it, just adds another layer that opens up something else within it. Prior to that, I'd probably say high school. We read The Inferno by Dante, and I really liked it. I think that it is a poem, so it kind of opened up an idea of poetry for me that was not there before. Probably part of the love of language that I think I have developed since then. But I read it again a couple of years ago and got a lot more out of it than when I was in high school. So, but that is excellent. And then going back a little bit farther, I would say Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck is one that had a pretty big impact. It's one that I still think about, and it's one that teaches a lesson about not just life, but about how to be a person and what it means to have empathy and what it means to make difficult decisions and when things don't go your way. Sixth question, what questions would you ask your favorite booktubers? Firstly, what sets you apart from everybody else? What makes it different, the way that you make your content compared to somebody else, and why would somebody watch yours versus somebody else? I would love, in their own words, what do they think about that? What are the biggest challenges for you, and why do you think that is? So not just what are your biggest challenges, how would you solve them? What are your biggest challenges and why do you have those things? What kind of prevention could you put in place in order to stop those challenges or to help solve them? If somebody was just starting making book content, what would you suggest? Maybe the top 5, top 3 recommendations for somebody just starting out doing something like that. But I think the beauty of it is that we can go to those people's YouTube channel and ask them those questions. Or we can go to Instagram and ask them those questions. We can say, what challenges are there? We can ask, what do you recommend for somebody just starting out? We can ask those questions. I think that's what is beautiful about social media, despite its drawbacks at times. 7th question is, what challenges do you think starting a booktube channel will be the hardest to overcome? The number one thing for me would be worrying too much about engagement, views, comments, likes, subscribers, all that stuff. Worrying too much about that. Humans are social. We want validation, we want appreciation. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We want those things, but they're also not everything when it comes to putting yourself out there for other people to see. Right, 8th question says, when did you start reading? Which I think is a difficult question because, I don't really remember, when I started reading when I was a kid. I know in elementary school I used to read a lot, and then I kind of fell out of it in middle, high school, even in college a little bit. I fell out of it and got back into it more after college, more consistently, reading for my own personal enjoyment. COVID actually was a big part of why I got back into it. I had a lot more time, obviously, at home, and picked it up a lot more, and ended up finding my favorite book of all time. If you can guess what it is, let me know. Number 9 says, where do you read? I usually read in a reading chair I have in the room behind me, in the corner with a lamp and a little side table. However, sometimes I do read in my bed before I'm going to sleep, and if it's not too hot, I'll read outside sometimes, but we kind of have some mosquitoes in the summer too in my backyard. We have a lot of bugs out there, so sometimes it's just not comfortable. But generally inside, reading chair that I have. If not there, then before I'm going to sleep. Question 10 says, what kind of books do you like to read? This is the hardest question that I have to answer whenever somebody asks me what books I like to read. I don't know how I would describe the majority of books. I would usually say obscure books, although I have read a lot of modern books that people know about, modern books or classic books that people know about. Literary fiction is probably the best descriptor of the category of genres that I would read, although I do not say that I'm a genre reader, that I read sci-fi or fantasy or horror or anything like that, because I don't like to pigeonhole myself into that and saying I like a certain genre when there very well is going to be books in a certain genre that I don't like. So I think the best way I would describe it is to kind of describe the things that I do like in books. Unique structure, strange imagery, unique and changing perspectives, manipulation of time. Plot, like I said before, isn't super important. It's not going to make or break a book for me, but if the plot is compelling, it can be a reason why I like a book. Mostly I would say dark, depressing, thought-provoking, poetic books, things that you can read and enjoy the way the words flow. That's something that I think is really interesting and keeps me engaged in the book. I do read some poetry, but not as much. That's not something that I can just kind of blast through and read all at once, just because it does get old after, sitting for a while reading one collection of poetry. I would read a little bit, then put it down for a day or two, and then come back to it later on. Sometimes there's an unexpected but deeply felt emotional connection or mental connection, stimulation of different parts of the brain that really get you engaged with a certain poem or poet or work of fiction or even nonfiction, although I tend to lean much more towards fiction. All right, finally, the last question says, what does your book collection look like? You can see behind me that I clearly have a problem with buying books, but they are haphazardly organized. They are not all in a certain place for a certain reason. I do have certain places where certain publishers go together, certain authors go together, or certain themes go together, but for the most part, I just kind of put things where I can because I buy them frequently. At this point, I do pretty much know what books I'm gonna like and what I'm not gonna like. So I don't really DNF books. I think that that's absolutely valid, and there's nothing wrong with not finishing a book that you started. I think that at this point though, I know what I'm gonna like and what I'm not gonna like. So it's pretty much kind of, if I find out that I'm not gonna read a book, or I decide, I don't want this anymore, I'll donate it. But for the most part, I buy books because I know that I'm gonna like them. I wanna have a large number of books that I can go and pick from at any time, because I am a mood reader. I try to get a certain list of books for each month, for each season that I'm in, and then I'll refresh that every once in a while. I don't like to stick to a certain month, but more of, once I get through this list, then I can move on to another list of to-be-read books. If you've made it this far into the video, I appreciate you. Don't forget to like it if you enjoyed it. Comment your favorite books, comment what you think mine is. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out.